Roger that. I'm the one dressed as the funeral director today, okay? My apologies.
I wondered about that. You even look like you combed your hair well.
Yeah. It's
I don't have
any. I'm out in Canada, so
okay.
away from the home station.
You say out Calgary or something?
Yeah, Calgary.
Yeah. Okay.
Snowy. Oh, cold. Oh boy.
Just imagine from Florida to Canada. It's a drastic change of weather.
From Trump to Arnie.
The people are incredibly nice, though.
Yeah. I used to go to the rodeo up there when I was a younger man. It was a lot of fun. All you did was walk across the border and walk back.
Yeah. Let's start with the current situation with the war between the United States and Iran, because it seems that the war is not between Iran and Israel, because Israel is so much busy with Hezbollah. They're not, fighting Iran anymore. And let's start with what General Keane said on Fox News and his assessment of the current situation. You know that Donald Trump has issued an ultimatum of 48 hours. Then he said it's going to be 5 days. Right now, 10 days more of, and here is what General Keane said.
A little less than 3 more weeks in the minds of our commanders to complete this operation. Given it's taken a little over 3 weeks to get where we are, you can ascertain then that we have a lot of work still in front of us. And what does that really mean? Well, for a fact, we're going to accomplish all of the assigned objectives that President Trump has given the CENTCOM commander. And in talking to the IDF, they fully intend to accomplish all the objectives that Prime Minister Netanyahu has given to them. And the general time frame is as described, around 3 weeks. If it happens sooner, fine. If they have to take a little longer, we've said from the beginning that this is conditions-based. The enemy has a vote. And what is the enemy trying to do right now? Number one, they're trying to personally survive and keep the regime somewhat intact. And believe me, that is an enormous problem that they have. And you can see that you're reporting on it every single day here in what is happening to the leadership. And the paranoia that exists inside of that leadership is real. And the chaotic decision-making process in there is real. So we're fragmenting that leadership for sure, and we have weeks to go to do more of that. The second thing they're doing, in addition to trying to survive individually and as a regime, is they're trying to protect their assets. They know we know where everything is, and we're systematically taking them down. They want to save something for sure, so they have the ability to retaliate against what? When we begin to open up the Straits of Hormuz, if we're going to take Carg Island, they're going to want to do some kind of military retaliation against likely allies and partners in the region, and U.S. bases would be the easiest targets. Israel, a more challenging target, to be sure. And they're trying to hide that, deceive that as much as possible, protect some of those resources, while at the same time still trying to fire missiles and drones at our bases and at Israel. So that makes those targets identification and destruction more challenging. Are we going to be able to do that? You betcha. But it takes more time, it takes more identification, more tracking to do that. I try to describe it in a football analogy. We're in the red zone here. We're on the 20-yard line. We're trying to get to the goal line, and the opposition is putting as much impediments in because they can see how close we are to attaining our objectives, and they're doing everything they can to prevent that from happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Nima, I just...
Go ahead, Colonel. Go ahead.
I love that analogy. We've been in the red zone a number of times over the last 30 years, and we've never scored a touchdown. I wonder how this is any different. And then the second thing I would say is that you never ask a person in a war or even a simulation if they're accomplishing their objectives, because they will tell you, yes, of course, and they will detail all the objectives that they have accomplished. You ask them, are you accomplishing your mission? And the mission has never been expressed, not by the president, not by the SecDef, not by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Is the mission bombing relentlessly? It appears to be. But there is no question that the mission is not being accomplished if the mission is, as I think they are saying in the corners, to bring the regime down. They haven't done it, and I don't think they're going to do it. So that was an idiotic presentation that I would not even have accepted from a Navy lieutenant commander or an Army major on a game floor without ripping his butt off.
Larry, your take on what's going on and how do you understand the situation?
Keane is delusional. I mean, he lives in a fantasy world. Number one issue should be the Strait of Hormuz. So I didn't appreciate this at the outset of this war either. It's been accumulating knowledge as it goes on. The world is in a recession now. Normally, they define a recession as it's 2 consecutive quarters of negative economic growth. So they say, well, you can't say it's a recession because we haven't had 6 months and we don't have the nonsense. The world is in a recession right now. The question is, will it become a depression? A depression means economic growth drops below 10% negative. The disruption of oil is one thing, and ironically, in that disruption of oil, Iran has benefited. They went from Trita Parsi, I forget whose show he was on, but he was explaining that prior to the war, Iran was pumping 1.1 million barrels of oil, selling it at 47. Now they're doing 1.5 million and selling it at 97. So more than double the price. The disruption of liquid natural gas is significant. It's really affecting Asia. Several countries have declared states of emergency because they've had this. They stopped frying food because the food's fried out of liquid natural gas. Then you got the fertilizer issue, with more than a third of the world's fertilizer source through the urea that comes out of the petrochemicals there in the Persian Gulf. That's gone. So we're not going to see the full effect of that for about 6 to 8 months, because right now is the planting season. And if the crops aren't getting properly planted with fertilizer, they ain't going to be growing. And that means when it comes time for harvest, you're not harvesting much. So we're looking at a food shortage, global food shortage. And with that applies potential famine in certain, or starvation in certain countries. So, I mean, that's not to be just solved. It doesn't affect us here. We don't know yet the full ramifications of that. Then there's the helium. So it turns out, who knew that the Persian Gulf also was a major source of helium, which is essential for producing computer chips. So now those computer chips aren't getting produced because they don't have the helium. And if those aren't produced, then the computers and the cell phones and the Tomahawk missiles and everything else those computer chips go into are not available. And then the sulfuric acid. I mean, it keeps going on, and it's not opening up. And even if somehow magically things turn around in a day or two, it's still getting the oil and liquid natural gas flowing again, getting the urea flowing again. It's going to take time. So this is having an economic impact on the world that particularly here in the United States we're not paying attention to yet. Starting to, but not fully comprehending it. So, Keane talking about all this. This is reminiscent of McNamara during the Vietnam War, where they'd come out and tell we killed X among the Viet Cong today, and all that turned out to be a lie too. So, things haven't changed.
And in addition, Neiman, to what Larry's talking about, which is all the practical side of it, which isn't looking too good at all, as he's just demonstrated. I saw yesterday we're up to 3,500 stranded ships standing off the Strait of Hormuz right now with no place to go. This is the other side of it. And guess who summed this up? I'm going to read this because it's precious from Arashi. He's at the emergency meeting of the UN. Emergency meeting called because of our attack on that school. And he says, and I'm paraphrasing, but these are the bullet points. 2 bullying nuclear weapons regimes have attacked a non-weapon regime. Second time they have torpedoed diplomacy. They are normalizing the crimes against humanity, which started with a vengeance, guess where? In Palestine, at the hands of Bibi Netanyahu, and as John Mearsheimer is pointing out increasingly, probably on a pretext because most of the people killed on October the 7th were killed by Israelis and not by Hamas. 27 days of illegal war, Arachi continues. No regard for humanitarian law whatsoever. 600 schools, hospitals, nursing homes, ambulances stationary and on the move, water sources, food sources, all war crimes, all a product of the world ignoring Palestine, bringing it back to the genocide that, has almost been buried now. But we have resolve, he ends up. We have resolve. I believe he does, and I believe his country does. We are becoming not only stalled at sea, as it were, as Larry pointed out, with grievous ramifications economically for not just us, but for the world. We are also becoming the most hated nation on the face of the earth, next only to Israel.
Yeah.
Larry, it seems that the situation with the invasion of Iran, or the invasion of islands of Iran in the Persian Gulf is getting serious, because what would be the escalation on the part of the United States and Israel? I think the next step could be an invasion of these islands. And many people are arguing which one would, are they going to invade various islands in the Persian Gulf? Are they going to go after one? And here is one of them, which is so interesting in terms of the strategy. This island is called Larak Island. Yeah. Larak, it comes here. You see the route of the tankers is coming from here and going to the close to the Qeshm Island, between the Qeshm Island and Larak. It passes here. Yeah. If they get this island, it could be it could make some sort of problem. And the other, you go up to here, what they're talking about here, this island here, Hark, which is far away, from the Strait of Hormuz. And what is your understanding, Larry, of the strategy that they're seeking for right now?
What was that word you used? Is that strategy? God, boy, you're an optimist. Look, let's start with what we know. Last week, it was published on this, it's called Open Source Intelligence Defender on X. And that source was reporting on another source called the Intel Frog. Well, the Intel Frog detailed that since March 12th, the flight of C-17s that were going from, 35 flights with 11 more to go reported. And so when I started looking at the bases, you realize this is a special operations mission that they're launching, because they're at Joint Base Lewis McChord. Well, that's 75th Rangers 2nd Battalion, I believe. Hunter Army Airfield, Task Force 160. It's got an element of that regiment deployed there, plus 75th Rangers 1st Battalion. Now understand that the 75th Rangers within the world of special operations, they're what they call a Tier 2 unit. They provide support to Delta Force SEAL Team 6. And in the 23 years I was doing exercises, we always jokingly said, every exercise we had to have an airfield that the Rangers could seize. That's one of the things they do. They go seize an airfield. The other the other flights, and we're talking not just one or two C-17s, we're talking multiple flights from each of these bases. Oceana Naval Station, Virginia, who's there? SEAL Team 6, as well as the East Coast SEALs. Pope Army Airfield, that's Delta Force 82nd Battalion, the 82nd Airborne, excuse me. Fort Campbell, Kentucky, headquarters of Task Force 160, the Night Stalkers. So it was clear that there was this movement. Now, there are only two things that are, when you see that kind of movement, it can only mean one of two things. It's an exercise, or they're going into battle. And based upon things I've heard from, I've got another friend who's buddies with somebody in Delta, and Delta is just saying they're sending us on a suicide mission. So they're going to send. Now, Trump initially announced that when I heard him do the 5 day last Monday, you thought, okay, that means, Friday today or tomorrow we're going to start the shooting. And originally that's what it looked like. And let me make one other point. That remember, that air movement started on March 12th. March 13th, they launched the first MEU, the 31st MEU out of Okinawa. Said, okay, you head to there. So this tells me this is planned. You don't start something on March 12th, March 13th as just an immediate, oh my God, we got a problem we've got to solve. No, this is planned out. The deployment of the 11th MEU, they're about a week behind, a week to 10 days, which now explains, I think yesterday, Trump announced, oh, okay, we're going to give them till April 6th, April 7th. That's next week. And that's when that other MEU will be in the area. So the intent of Trump is they are going to launch a ground operation. Now, on Keshem Island, my understanding is that there is one of those underground missile cities there. So they would specifically task either Delta Force or SEAL Team 6 with attacking and capturing that site. They're assuming that Iran doesn't have any defenses in place. I think that's a very foolish assumption. And actually, I don't think Delta or SEAL Team 6 would assume that. So you're going to look at a battle that if they capture that missile city, okay, that they've got that, but that still doesn't open the Strait of Hormuz. And if you put military forces on any of those islands, that does not open the Strait of Hormuz, because Iran can still start deploying more mines into the waters, and they've said that they would. They said they'd flood the Gulf with mines, not just there in the Strait. They've got underwater drones. They've got submarines with torpedoes. Then they've got the missiles above ground and the drones above ground. So if you're going to open the Strait, the mission has got to be, we've got to shut down all of Iran's offensive capabilities, and just putting guys on these islands is not going to do that.
And further, Neiman, I have heard so many experts, I put that in quotation marks, in the last 48 hours down at William and Mary, I heard a number of them talking about the Strait and the geography of the Strait. Man, I've been there, done that. I was doing some of the planning around Ernest Will and Praying Mantis at Pacific Command. They get it wrong. One person said, well, the average depth of the Strait is so deep that you couldn't do much to it. The average depth of the Strait is 50 meters. Now, that's pretty deep. That allows you to sink a supertanker, for example, and probably not have impediments, but it's not all that deep. And one of the things we were worried about was several ships being sunk and blocking that. And oh, by the way, the North Channel, I think the north goes on the right side if you're looking up north, and the south goes on the left side. They're different channels, and they're slightly different in terms of salinity, current, and other things that impact passage through the strait. But this is not an easy strait to open if somebody is intent on keeping it closed, as we learned in 1988. And they're talking about it as if it were, as Larry was saying, you just do this, you get this, and you get that, and you can keep them from blocking the strait. Au contraire, it is awfully easy to block that strait. And I'm sure Iran has given it detailed study, since their efforts in 1988. In fact, I would say they're probably leagues ahead, as Larry was pointing out, with weaponry and methodologies and such. And it just doesn't take much. And as Larry was pointing out before, to scare the world to death, and insurers and shippers alike, all you got to do is get one. That's all you got to do. And then it takes a long time before any Navy can convince people that, hey, you can sail again.
Yeah, and let's recall that what happened in 1988, that was all in the context of the Iraq-Iran war, which the United States helped provoke and sustain. Remember, the United States was not just providing the chemical precursors to Iraq to manufacture chemical weapons, but it was also providing intelligence. I know Colonel Patrick Lang, Pat Lang, who set up the Arabic program at West Point, and later was the senior defense intelligence officer for the Middle East. He was the one that was hand carrying the intelligence to Iraq to help Iraq defeat Iran. And so when Iran started mining the straits, then, and this shows you how things have changed in almost 40 years. We had a barge off the coast of Bahrain. It was called the Hercules barge. It was an oil platform, but it was taken over by Navy SEALs. And the SEAL that commanded that is a friend of mine. He was a commander at the time. And they had little birds, and they had their own gunboats, and they had several clashes with Iran. But at the time, Iran wasn't attacking with drones. Iran wasn't attacking with missiles. So Iran was really in sort of the early days of its military capability. Whole different ball game today, completely different.
Well, they set up on a couple of derricks, as I recall, and we wiped them out on the derricks because they were just open on these derricks.
Yeah.
They won't be like that this time around, I guarantee you.
Yeah. I think we had the French general, he's talking to the French media, in which he describing in French that they have done simulations together with the United States a few months ago, before this war happening. He says that all those simulations led to the total the Navy going to be destroyed if they go in that direction, because the outcome of those simulations was that. And he sees no viable choice, because the United States has studied this, in his view, together with the French. And he mentions that Iran has a lot of information and intelligence in that region, so they have the upper hand. And if that's the case, Colonel, what is Donald Trump trying to do?
Well, just to pick up on your theme there initially, Millennium Challenge, I think, was the name of the game in 02 or 03 that Lieutenant General Van Riper conducted. He was my old boss at Marine Corps Development and Education Command. And he conducted that simulation, and we lost. We lost. He was directed to conduct it again because we didn't like the fact that we lost. I just met with him not too long ago down in Williamsburg, because he lives in Williamsburg, still chipper at 88, fitness nut, and brain still right there going. And he kind of gave me the same impression again, only worse, because Iran, as Larry said, has not sat still. And they certainly haven't sat still with regard to new technology and watching what that new technology does and doesn't do in Ukraine. And that's another instrument that's entering it now. Zelensky's selling to both sides and trying to resurrect some of his own standing, and courting both I'm told he's courting both the Iranians in terms of giving them more drones and advice, and the Arabs in terms of the same thing. So Zelensky's playing both sides of the aisle. All to say that as Larry indicated, I just don't think this is the same situation it was in '88. It's quite a lot different. And I'm not sure we appreciate that. And that game, even in 2000, I think it was Millennium Challenge, and it was actually conducted in '02, I think. But it showed us losing. We lost, just like you're saying your Frenchman and the current simulations apparently indicate. We lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when I say loss, I'm saying basically we could not reopen the strait, and that's a loss. that's a huge loss because you really jammed up the world's shipping.
Yeah, as long as Iran can retain the possibility of launching a missile or two or drones at any ship that's going there through the strait, unless those ships are equipped with some magical new technology that prevents them from being hit with drones or missiles, that strait's going to remain closed. And reportedly, the Gulf Arabs are pressing the United States, oh, you got to do something. You got to get an agreement that's going to limit Iran's ability to use missiles and drones. Well, the only way that will be accomplished is to fully invade Iran, conquer Iran, and then put your own puppets in place. That ain't happening. The United States it would bankrupt the United States to try to do it. I mean, apart from just the logistical challenge of mobilizing a 3 million man army minimum, and then somehow, how the hell are you going to transport them over there? We don't have the merchant marine fleet to do that. And then once you get them over there, where are they going to disembark? Are you going to put them at some base in Saudi Arabia where they're going to be a ripe target for Iran? I mean, this just, this military fantasy that we can force Iran to bend to our will. No, look, all I can tell you, something is going to be happening in the next 4 weeks. Why do I say that? I was supposed to go to Russia with the International Unity Club, and they coordinate with the Kremlin because we get to meet with senior Russian officials and do a number of discussions. And in fact, Pepe Escobar was going to be involved with that as well. We were both notified yesterday it's canceled. And it's canceled because of the war in Iran. And the word circulating around the Kremlin is that Russia's going to get involved in this. I'm not saying they're going to start fighting, but they're going to get involved more directly to try to bring an end to it, but an end that's going to make Iran secure. They're not going to abandon Iran. And the part of the reason Russia's taking these steps, I believe, is they're getting a number of these countries that are coming to beg and plead, oh my God, we're suffering, we're dying here, help us. But, I see Russia and China actually collaborating, but it's going to be a collaboration, I think, that ultimately is going to force the United States out of the Persian Gulf and force those Gulf allies, the former Gulf allies of the United States, come to their senses. Because the reality is the only democratic elected government there in the Persian Gulf is in Iran. Not Saudi Arabia. I mean, these are all family, tribal autocracies. And there we are. That's what we're backing. The autocracies as opposed to the democracy.
Which is probably one reason that words coming out of the Gulf that Mohammed bin Salman, for one, is pushing us to continue this war.
Yeah.
Good person that he is, Yemen that he is.
Yeah. Colonel, here is what General Jim Mattis said about his assessment of the war.
What we're seeing is a situation where targetry never makes up for a lack of strategy. And by that I mean 15,000 targets have been hit. There have been significant military successes, but they are not matched by strategic outcomes. Now, some of the strategic outcomes early on, unconditional surrender, regime change, we're going to dictate who the next supreme leader is. Those were clearly nonsense. Those were delusional.
Yeah.
He's right on the mark. I've heard some other remarks he made that were not so salutary, but he's right on the mark in terms of the lack of genuine strategic objectives. By that I mean accomplishable. And he's right on the mark about what we said at the very opening of your presentation or your interview. And that is that it doesn't matter the number of bombs you dropped. It doesn't matter the number of sorties you made. It doesn't matter the number of aircraft you've put over Iran. And that's a lie, too, in many respects. They're shooting most of their ordnance not from over Iran. It doesn't matter if you're not accomplishing your mission. And here we have two problems. I don't think there's a mission you could accomplish that would fit Donald Trump's wishes. And there isn't any mission expressed. When's the last time you heard a mission? I've heard everything from regime change to, oh, well, we're just going to do a little diplomacy and end their nuclear program. Oh, well, we're also going to include the ballistic missiles. Oh, well, we're back to regime change. Meanwhile, you got the real orchestrator of the death and destruction in Lebanon in particular, but continuing in Gaza every day, continuing in the West Bank every day, not paying attention at all and not giving a damn about what we're doing as long as we continue to bomb. This is a cacophony of errors.
Larry, the war is not just fought by the army, but also with the people of those countries. Right now, we have two countries fighting each other, Israel and Iran. The United States is coming from outside. The United States, we know the support for Donald Trump in this war. How is that diminishing in the United States? But when it comes to Israel and Iran, I don't know if you watched the video in which one of the Israeli mayors just is breaking down on air, just crying that the situation, how dire is the situation in Israel. We had two mayors, by the way, talking about this. And the head of IDF, in his last assessment, is the IDF is on the verge of collapse. This is what he said. Your understanding of what's going on in that direction?
Well, look, we've got 2.5 years of Israel failing, and I emphasize the word failure, to defeat Hamas. You know, it is beyond me how an army of 300,000, that was my understanding of what was activated with reservists, that has surrounded an area that's 5 miles wide, 25 miles long, and now has virtually destroyed every building above ground, is afraid to go in and root out the fighters that are in the tunnels. So, I mean, that's the reality. Could an army do it? Yes, and suffer terrible losses in the process. But and so there is the key right there. Israel is they want to start wars, but they don't want to take the pain. They want to have a painless war. Well, there's no such thing. So then on top of it, they decided, oh, hey, it's great. We've weakened Hezbollah so much that we can now attack into southern Lebanon. We're going to take all that territory just south of the Litani River. And I tell you what, Hezbollah is blowing the hell out of the Israelis. I mean, by the various reports, it looks like they've knocked out a total of 1920 Merkava tanks in the course of the last 2 weeks. They ambushed a full column coming into this one village, and again, Hezbollah is fighting very smartly. So they hit the middle of the column, and so it forced it to separate. And then they started picking it off from the rear. And at one point, the Israelis got out and were running for their lives. So, you know, the false story that, oh, they had decimated Hezbollah and it was weakened, and, you know, they're toast. That's not the case. And Hezbollah continues to fight, launch rockets and missiles into northern Israel. Now, they're targeting principally military bases, military installations, but they're causing great harm in Israel. And that's one of the reasons that mayor is crying. So then add to that, oh, they're going to now fight Iran. They do not have unlimited resources. They are entirely, completely dependent upon the United States in order to sustain these combat operations. The minute the United States pulls the plug, they're toast. And then there's a question of, can Israel actually survive as a nation? Because its economy is being savaged by Iran with these missile strikes every day. You know, multiple waves of missiles. Now, some of the Iranian missiles of late, you keep hearing Israel say, "Oh, we intercepted this, we intercepted that." Nonsense. The missiles didn't work. The missiles failed. I guarantee you, if Israel was actually intercepting them, you'd see the videos. They'd be plastered all over the place showing, look at what we're doing, man. We're wiping out. Israel can't touch us because our air defense system's so good. Well, it's not. It sucks.
In that regard, I've actually got some pretty good evidence that was given to me at William and Mary that they are actually, the Iranians, using drones again because they are useful. They don't get shot down. They're using very slow moving but lethal drones because they don't get shot down. So they're preserving their more sophisticated missiles for later, and using drones to do a lot of damage to things because there's nothing to shoot them down. And last night in Hebrew again, translated for me by a friend, Netanyahu said he's calling up 400,000 more reservists. Where's he going to find these 400,000 more reservists? He just called up 300,000, of which about 30% didn't show up, or is, failing to report for duty, if you will. Where's he going to get these other 400,000? Do the numbers on the population of Jews in Israel and figure out where he's going to find these troops. And yet I heard him saying, and granted it was in Hebrew and had to be translated, but that he was going to call another 400,000 up, and then he said it was for Lebanon. So Larry's absolutely right. He's got a problem in Lebanon, a big problem. Yeah. But I don't know where he's going to find these troops.
Yeah. Larry, there is a discussion between Benjamin Netanyahu or the prime minister. I don't know who's, because there are many rumors around Netanyahu, but let's put it this way. The head of Mossad and Benjamin Netanyahu, they're having discussions because the head of Mossad says that he told Benjamin Netanyahu what would be the outcome of this war for the network of the covert operations in the southern part of the Persian Gulf. And it seems that all that network was destroyed by the war. They're not there anymore. And this is bringing a lot of tensions between Benjamin Netanyahu and the head of Mossad. And putting, what was that? He's talking about in UAE, in Bahrain, somewhere, in these countries. They were working with the governments, with the bases, American bases in those countries.
So was he saying that their intelligence assets, their network of?
He said that Mossad covert networks in the southern Persian Gulf were destroyed.
Okay. Yeah, probably intelligence networks, both people, and as well as they may have had some communication systems, for example. This is the start of the blame game. So you gotta, when you're losing, you gotta find a scapegoat. And so my prediction is in the United States, it's an outlier prediction. But one of the people that's going to be blamed for this war not going right and Donald Trump not getting a win is going to be Tulsi Gabbard. She'll get the blame in part. Hegseth too, probably. But now that Netanyahu's pointing fingers at Mossad because they're making, well, Mossad told us that this would be over in a week, and we believed them. Okay, you're hanging Mossad out to dry.
You're going to see them fighting blood fights amongst the leadership in Israel. It's just inevitable. You fought. You were at fault. You were at fault. You did this. You did that. You're already seeing it with some of the retirees who have come out of the woodwork to say things. But it's going to start with the people who are actually around Netanyahu and others. I don't think Ben-Gvir and Smotrich and people like that will ever go. You'll have to kill them with a silver bullet or a stake through their heart. But there are other Israelis who are really getting worried, really seriously worried. And well, they should be. Well, they should be. If the videos I'm seeing coming out of there now, smuggled out, but nonetheless good videos, are accurate, I have no reason to doubt they aren't. There's everything coming down and nothing going up. I mean, everything is hitting. Everything is hitting.
And they're attacking Naftali Bennett as well, because yesterday he had an interview in Hebrew, in which he said that Netanyahu is losing against Lebanon, against Hezbollah. He lost in Gaza, and he lost against Iran as well. And these comments are bringing a lot of repercussions in Israel, and they're accusing him that he's a traitor because we are in the middle of this war. He's making these sort of comments, but everybody knows that who's Naftali Bennett, and who, when he's talking this way, it means something.
Well, Naftali Bennett is also mad at Netanyahu for allowing what happened to happen in Gaza, because it slowed down the killing considerably. They're still killing every day. There's not a day that goes by that 30 or 40 Palestinians don't die. But it's not the hundreds and thousands even that were dying beforehand. So Bennett's angry at him for allowing Trump to do that, for allowing that UN resolution, allowing the thing to set up at least in a way that attenuates his ability to kill Palestinians. That's what Bennett's angry about. These are the same people, Nima. They just wear different clothes. They're bloodthirsty cretins.
Larry, Axios reported that the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, had a difficult call with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday, where he said that Israeli assessment for toppling the Iranian regime were not realistic enough, saying that they were too optimistic. And it seems that not only in Israel, the fight is, the blame game is going on, but in the United States, they're trying, because yesterday you see the cabinet members, meeting, you see everybody's trying to defend Donald Trump. When it comes to Steve Witkoff, even J.D. Vance was mentioning, if we were not there, attacking Iran, they may use these vests, the suicide vests, with nuclear bombs.
Suicide vests, yeah. I mean, it shows they don't, his ignorance of history. The fact that 90% of the suicide bombers, they're Sunni, they're not Shia.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, the groups that carry those out are, outside of the Sunni radicals, the Tabel Tigers of Sri Lanka, they used to be heavily into that too. But not Iran. They're not a suicide bomber kind of country.
Now, if you want to see a Gulf-based sponsor of terrorism in a state configuration, look at Riyadh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Larry, here is Donald Trump was talking about a big gift from Iranians, and he finally revealed that gift yesterday. Here is what he said.
Revealed the present?
You can do anything you want.
Thank you. They said to show you the fact that we're real and solid and we're there. We're going to let you have 8 boats of oil, 8 boats, 8 big boats of oil. This was 2 days ago. And they'll sail up tomorrow. That was 3 days ago. And I didn't think much about it. And then I watched the news, and he said, something's unusual happening. There are 8 boats that are going right up the middle of the Hormuz Strait. And I said, well, I guess we're dealing with the right people. And actually, they then apologized for something they said, and they said, we're going to send 2 more boats. And it ended up being 10 boats.
Yeah.
What a buffoon. Because, they send those boats with oil and sell them at $97 a barrel. And that money's going into Iran's pocket. What a gift. What a gift. And Trump's trying to put the shine on that. All he's doing is helping, 2 months ago, starting on December 28th, we crashed the economy. Scott Bessent bragged about it. We did that. We devalued, we forced the bank to collapse, except, man, we're filling that bank up with money now. So, the Iranians go, hey, these Americans, what are you going to do? because the United States has a history of just flat out ignorance in interacting with this region. Because remember, when we took out Saddam Hussein, and that ended up empowering Iran, because the two major Shia groups. I'm not talking about the group headed by Mokhtar al-Sadr, Muki, as I used to call them, but the Dawa and the other group, they were closely aligned with Iran. They ended up getting into, ruling the government, and they even fought alongside U.S. troops against Al-Qaeda and ISIS. So, here's Trump once again. That's his gift. I don't know. Did you see the? I got a cartoon from somebody that showed the gift that was given to Donald Trump. It was a giant golden middle finger, and he unwraps the box and is looking up at it. That was the gift from Iran.
Another thing about that cabinet meeting yesterday, Nima, I have no way of checking the value or the truth or accuracy of this, but it just rings true to me. If you go back and you listen to Witkoff's presentation as a special envoy, there was nothing in there about the money he and Jared Kushner made in terms of, oh yeah, that's neat, in terms of contracts. But I'm told that they have not met directly with a single member of the Iranian government in the entire time of this negotiating process. Not a single one. It's all been good offices by Pakistan or Oman or someone. They haven't talked to anyone. And yet he talked as if he had presented that deal and it had been completely refused. And you needed a jar of Vaseline beside every seat, if you get my drift. I've never seen such a group of sycophants pretending to be a cabinet.
Wow.
Yeah. No, it's just sickening.
Larry, UAE wants to make some sort of coalition with the United States in one of these, because some of these islands in the Persian Gulf that they belong to Iran, they say, and they have their claim as well, that they said these are the islands of UAE, but they're talking about making some sort of coalition in the Persian Gulf in these islands to manage the situation with the Strait of Hormuz. And they're not basically close to the Strait of Hormuz. That's why I found it so much, inaccurate when you talk about. But what are the capabilities of UAE? Because these guys are somehow, it seems to me, they're riding their bodies, their ego is riding a check that their body cannot cash.
Little Sparta.
Yeah.
That's their nickname.
None of these countries, neither the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, or Saudis, they got zero military capability. I mean, look at the Saudis. They fought like a 10-year war with the Houthis, and how'd that go? They lost that. So these guys they're indulging a fantasy. UAE is in serious economic crisis right now, because when you consider 25% of their income comes from the export of oil. Okay, that ain't going out, so take 25% off the table. Then another like 20% of their income was generated through trade that went through Jebel Ali, this free trade port, free trade zone. It's like the largest one or second largest one in the world. Well, that's shut down because there are no ships coming in and out with goods to trade. What about the financial district? They were big. They became a big center for handling money and finance. Those people that were running those offices, they've bugged out. They've gone back to New York or to London or to Switzerland, but they ain't hanging out in Dubai anymore. The construction industry of these brand new glowing condos. And the real estate market, you had all these foreigners coming in, thinking about buying a place in Dubai. They're not buying. The airplanes that are arriving in Dubai from outside are empty, and when they fly out, they're full. So Dubai literally could cease being, if this goes on for another 6 months, United Arab Emirates will just implode. It's because there's no there.
Colonel, the head of Iranian parliament said if the invasion happens, that would be the end of UAE. He didn't mention the name of UAE, but he said one of these Arab states in the Persian Gulf who is cooperating with the United States with the invasion. That's going to be, they have the list of targets, and they have various 5, 6 targets, and he said they're going to destroy all of them. And
all they'd have to do, Nima, is, when we did the simulation in Beijing in 2009, we took down Ras Tanura, which at that time was the leading Saudi output port. It was about 8 million barrels a day that they put out of there. There's another one now, I forget the name, but it's putting out even more than that. And of course, Iraq has gotten to the point now where they're putting out almost as much as the Saudi chief port. So when we did that, oil went, West Texas WTI and Brent crude went above 150 within 10 hours, and within the day above 200. You do that sort of thing, you eliminate that kind of capacity, you have got, as Larry was saying earlier, a tremendously deepened and more profound economic problem globally. And you're not going to restore it anytime soon. So Iran still has some arrows in its quiver that would be deadly against some of these other states. That is, Larry was indicating, they're just petrostates. That's all they are. You take that away from them, they disappear.
Yeah. And I'm trying to bring up the list of targets that the Iranian media somehow published them. It's called Jebel Ali. It's 15% of the gas going from outside of Dubai. And here is Baraka. They have a list of these targets in UAE.
Probably they're taking out the pipeline head too, I would imagine. The one that the Saudis finally got over to vicinity of Jeddah to empty into the Red Sea rather than the Persian Gulf.
And here is the list of targets that they have mentioned them. Goes from 50% of the gas, the nuclear plant they have, all the gas and, energy production. It's all about energy and gas production.
Neiman, I got to run. Ted Postall won't forgive me if I don't get this out. He talked to me for about 45 minutes down at William & Mary the other night. He thinks, and he gave me enough credibility to believe he might be at least 60, 70%, 80% right. The Iranians have underground the capability to build a nuclear weapon, and that they are doing it. And that at some point in here, they are going to hook that up with a warhead and a hypersonic missile, and they're going to say, we've got it, and we can shoot it. Would you like a demonstration or whatever? That adds a new dimension to this. And if he's right, and they do have that, and it is pretty much sacrosanct because it's so deeply underground, much the way the Koreans did when they surprised the hell out of us with not 1, but 2 nuclear tests, that changes the game completely. So I just wanted to get that out because I promised Ted I would.
Larry, there are a lot of discussions in Iran about NPT. What is the meaning of NPT anymore? And what would be the policy of Iran as time goes by with the nuclear program? Yeah. And just considering all of that, you see the head of IAEA, Grossi, is talking about the only solution to Iranian nuclear program is to nuke them. Here is what he said.
We still need to find a framework, an agreed framework that is going to be providing us with the necessary previsibility and sense of a clear idea of where they are, what they want to go,
Because this war will not destroy Iran's nuclear ambitions and capabilities.
I would say anywhere.
Anywhere.
Unless it was nuclear war and you go for destruction in an unfathomable way, which we hope, of course, will not.
This was making a huge, sort of influence in Iran, and everybody's talking about this. And they say if calling him Mossad, CIA agent, and saying that this guy is, I think, Larry, we're going to witness finally a huge shift, as Colonel just mentioned, in the Iranian nuclear program. And they're considering all of these options because they see, when the head of IAEA talks this way, that's hugely problematic.
Yeah. Now, Colonel Wilkerson, do you need to bail?
I'm going to bail right now, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I got
See you later, my friend.
Take care.
See you, Larry.
Yeah, so what we're dealing with, Nima, here is actually, I think it is the end of the international order that was erected in the aftermath of World War II. So I'm not just talking about Bretton Woods economic system. I mean, that's coming apart at the seams. But it's also this whole concept of international law that Donald Trump clearly has rejected. His entire administration has rejected international law. And in doing so, they've left it. It's now who's biggest, who's strongest, and who's got the most bullets behind them. So we're going to go through. We're likely to go through some period of great, beyond what we're seeing right now, an escalating war, and it'll be out of that war that will recreate a new system. The United Nations, it's done. It's irrelevant. United Nations is no longer relevant. It has become what the League of Nations was. Remember, the League of Nations, it continued to operate during the 1930s, and they didn't finally close it down until after World War II, when the United Nations was put into place. They still had a headquarters in Switzerland, and were pretending to be relevant, and they weren't. They're no longer relevant. And so this whole issue with the non-proliferation treaty, the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, that used to carry some weight. But we've seen, as Colonel Wilkerson quoted Arachi, saying, two nuclear powers attacked a country that didn't have nuclear weapons. And so now, they have this failure to abide by international law, held by even by human decency, has now created a situation that, I think Iran very well may have decided we have no alternative but to create a nuclear weapon now. That's the only thing that's going to absolutely defend us from these kinds of attacks going forward. And because if Israel knows that Iran can launch a hypersonic missile carrying a nuclear warhead, Iran will cease to exist. I mean, Israel will cease to exist, excuse me. But Iran's already under that threat. One nuke, two nukes from Israel is not going to force Iran to cease to exist. It's still, Iran's too big. Israel's too small.
Yesterday, Larry, here is what Donald Trump said when he was asked if the United States is going to leave these Arab states in the Persian Gulf. Here is what he said.
There's some reports that Gulf allies are concerned about winding down the war too soon and potentially leaving Iran.
Well, they'd probably like us to stay, but
the concern
if we don't stay, look, it's a beautiful thing about airplanes that go 2,000 miles an hour. You can get back there very quickly. If we don't stay, we're going to be protecting them. We know, they've been very good. Hey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, in particular.
2,000 miles per hour, an airplane traveling 2,000. I think that's like the space shuttle. Okay, that's not a plane. Oh my God.
And there was an article in the New York Times in Fighting Remotely, What is that? What is this sort of concept, Larry? it seems that the situation with the Gerald Ford USS, aircraft carrier is serious. They're talking about the aircraft carrier cannot get back to the fight. And when you want to go with the invasion and your aircraft carrier is far away, Abraham Lincoln is far away from the Iranian coast, who's going to support this operation?
Well, the traditional concept of invading a country from the sea means that you use I forget if it's called the LPD or the LHD, or they've got, the Marine Corps has two different ships. One ship has in the bottom of the ship, they've got amphibious landing craft that literally they can open like the gates, the front of the bow, and these landing craft come shooting out and can go to carry Marines to shore. The problem with that is that means that ship has to get close to shore. I mean, 5 miles off, 10 miles off. Well, all of a sudden, then it's a sitting duck for missiles and drones. So, this is where war has now changed because of the technologies involved. During World War II, we saw sort of the beginnings of the threat to the carrier force with kamikaze pilots. When the Japanese started dive bombing into it, that was a human drone at that point. And that caused a lot of damage and killed a lot of sailors. But we survived that, and Japan, ultimately conceded. Well, we're in a whole different world now, where the aircraft carrier, even the destroyers, they're not safe. They no longer are capable of projecting the kind of power that we used to. And so now what do you do? Because the issue is, how are you going to get troops to shore? Either you're going to carry them over the water, you're going to carry them over land, or you're going to drop them from the sky. And again, dropping them from the sky assumes that you're able to fly over an area that no longer has air defense, because those are relatively, the planes have to fly fairly slow just to get people out, parachute without ripping them off. Flying at 500 miles an hour is not, that creates problems for jumpers. So we're operating on a military model that is no longer relevant to the technology that exists. And, I think that that's one of the lessons that's being exposed right now with Iran and its missile force and its drone force, basically holding the West at bay.
Yeah. Thank you, Larry, for being with us today. You are in Canada. Your voice is getting, I totally understand the dryness of the weather that you're feeling right now.
No humidity, so I get a gravelly voice.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you on Monday. Stay safe.
See you on Monday. Yeah, in your headquarters in Florida. Yeah.
Yeah, back to corporate headquarters.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.